right, so my name's Brett Bowden. This Printed Threads is my company, and I want to, the focus of this this month is on design. I want to talk a little bit about like the design of my life and my day and all the things that I do, and there's plenty of them. But before we talk about that design, we kind of have to talk about like the mess that I created and how I designed my way out of it. So growing up, I always had a love of music. I remember when I was in middle school and thinking about playing music and being in a rock band and dreaming of going on tour and all that stuff. And so me and my friends all got together and we were going to start a band. And we just, when you're in a group of friends and no one plays an instrument, everybody chooses the instrument, and whoever like chooses last plays bass. And that's me. And so I had the fortune to be in a group of friends. We all got together. We played in garages and neighborhood clubhouses and those types of things. And that was a great time and was a great introduction to a whole lot of people. From that, always had this dream of like being able to go on tour. And I had a friend who asked me to go on tour with them. I sold merchandise. I became a tour manager, whatever that is, at small scale band. And then a very good friend of ours had started a band, just kind of a singer-songwriter type situation. He needed some people to play with him. That band was called the Rocket Summer, and took us all over the place and got to meet a whole lot of people. From that, I left that band, joined another band with some people that were heroes of mine. That band ended up being called Yellow Second, and never really got really big, but we did some cool things. We signed to a subsidiary of Warner Brothers and toured and went and did lots of cool things and met a whole lot of cool people. At some point in there, I decided that this wasn't going to be my career, and I better start focusing on something career-based since I was in my mid-20s, and I decided to go to college, which I think going to college when you're older than everybody else in college is a strange experience, but it was a good experience. So you said you're from Denver. I went to the University of Colorado at Denver and received a music degree there. So at some point before going to college, I had started this merchandising company called the Merchandise Factory. I actually started it in 2000. It was a company that would provide merchandise to bands. And so since I was always on tour with bands, I knew all these people to talk to. I was selling t-shirts to all these people. Well, when the bands, when I got to the point that I was just on the road or gone most of the time, I couldn't run the business anymore. I sold it to a friend of mine. He is now the head of R&D for a little company called Amazon. So he was able to take what we had created and really blow it up in a big way, sold, and went to work for the giant down the street. But that was my first taste of t-shirts, right? And that it's important to know that because there's a little boomerang happening here. I go to college. I decide that in this process of going to school, I get a bachelor's degree in music. I decide I want to be a teacher. I graduated from college in 2009. Our country was in the middle of a recession. No one was hiring. I interviewed for school district I even interviewed with Dallas ISD. Thank God I didn't get that job. So I was willing to do whatever it took, and I really wanted to be a teacher, and it just didn't work out. So the way I worked my way through college was being a cable guy. I would climb telephone poles. I would go into strange people's houses. I have crazy stories. One time I was in a customer's house, and they were mad about their bill, and they were yelling at me like I could do anything about it. The customer, I told him to call Comcast. The customer slams his front door, locks it, and tells me to sit on his couch. I said, "Fuck you," and opened the door, walked out on his front porch. He jumped on my back and tried to tackle me. I threw him off of me and took off running. There was a picket fence in his front yard. I had to hurdle the picket fence, jump into my truck. By the time I got into my truck, he was chasing after me, jumped in the passenger side of my truck. And so next time the cable guy's late, just remember, he might have had a weird morning. Sometime in this period of going to college and being a cable guy, I meet this lady. Her name is Sarah. We fall in love. We get married. And at this time we're living in Denver, we got married in a beautiful, actually, barn in Evergreen, and just the pictures of it are beautiful. And then promptly after, I remember we had a wedding reception in Denver, but then we also had one in Texas after our honeymoon a week later. And I remember my brother coming up to me saying, like, "How does it feel to be pregnant already?" And I was like, "Shut up, man." And then 9 months later, we had Dash. Dash is now 13. He's my little buddy. We were out at the bar till 12:30 last night because he wanted to hang out. And so now I am the tag-along, which is super weird. After having Dash, we decided that we wanted to live life a little bit differently. Cost of living in Denver is very high. It's about double what it is here in Texas. And we came and looked at Texas, and we looked at these houses in Keller, and we're like, oh my gosh, we can own a mansion. And so we moved to Keller and bought this 3,000 square foot house for half the price that our house half the size in Denver was. What we didn't realize is what we were trading off, because instead of having a beautiful view of the mountains every morning when I woke up, I had a view of my neighbor's bathroom light, and that was not a good trade. So it was actually a very difficult move, and we really struggled with that for a long time. In fact, recently we bought a house a few years ago, we bought a house over here in Fort Worth in a neighborhood called Oakhurst, and we can sit in our backyard surrounded by trees and not see our neighbor's house. So that was a pretty huge upgrade. But we moved to Texas. The key was cost of living. I was working as a warehouse manager of a cable company here. It was killing my soul, and I was working 6 days a week so that all you lovely people could have cable TV and internet at home. You're welcome. So shortly after moving here, we have another baby. Her name's Lyric. She's 11 now. And first girl in the Bowden lineage. So that was a big deal, pretty fun. I didn't expect to have a girl. I was terrified, but it's been a great journey. She is full of sass, oh my God. And then right around the time Lyric is born, I come home to my wife and I say, hey, I think it would be I hate this cable thing, and I used to print t-shirts, maybe I could do it again. And in order to do this, we need to get a loan for about $10,000, and at the time, I was in a job making like $500 a week. We didn't have a lot of money. Luckily, my wife was a nurse at Cook Children's, and she had a decent salary, and so we just took the risk. We went to the bank and asked for a little bit of money. They said, you can't have that much, and so we made it work with a little bit less. But anyways, that's how Printed Threads started, was just from this idea of doing something a little bit different. Never did I expect it to grow to this size when we were working out of a garage in Red Velvet Road in Keller, Texas. After starting Printed Threads, I had this idea. I was like, what if I started a retail store, and we could make all the shirts and sell all the shirts in the retail store, and maybe we'll pair it with skateboarding because that's fun. And so in downtown Keller, Old Town Keller, we started this store called the General Store, and we owned that for about 4 years. It was a really kind of a fun experiment at the time. Shortly after opening that, we had another baby. His name's Cove. He's 8 years old now. He's the most creative little 8-year-old I can imagine. He's a lot of fun to be around and tells hilarious jokes, which when you see a child that small that can make a whole room laugh, there's something a little special there. And then shortly after Cove is born, I'm pretty burnt out from printed threads and general store and these things I've been doing. Around this time, 2015, printed threads showed up on the Inc. magazine fastest growing companies list at number 826. That's because we went from $60,000 of revenue our first year to $300,000 to $660,000 to $1.1 million to $2.2 million. So our company was doubling in size every single year. And if you've ever been a part of growth like that, it's exhausting and soul-sucking, and you work from 6 a.m. to midnight on a regular basis. And it was very, very difficult. So I had been joking around with my wife, and every time we would drive by an RV, it was like, we should get an RV. And it was always a joke. And then one day I was like, what if we did this thing where we just got an RV and then like drove around America? And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And so in March of 2015, we went and bought a 42-foot fifth wheel. I went and bought a Ford F-350. I remember when I got in that truck for the first time and I drove from Grapevine Ford back to our house in Keller, I was like white-knuckled, like this thing is huge, you know, like how do we drive this? It was scary. And then we added a 42-foot trailer to the back of it, and suddenly I'm a semi-truck driver. And we drove from here to San Diego to Maine and a whole lot of places in the middle of it. We did that for a year and a half. It was fabulous. Towards the end of that, things were not going well here. When you're the captain of the ship, it's a good idea to be at the helm. and I, you know, since I was burnt out and exhausted, I just left. And so towards the end, it became a realization. I had the realization that if I don't get back, where this thing's going to sink forever, and I wasn't ready to go down yet. So. In the middle of this, we started teaching classes. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, you've kind of built this business. A lot of people look up to your business, and maybe you could help other people start businesses by teaching screen printing classes. And I said, well, you know, that's crazy because I went to college and I got a degree and I always wanted to be a teacher, so maybe this would be a good fit. So from there, I start teaching, and I started teaching. I had a commitment to teach 1 weekend a week, which would be a Friday, Saturday class. People would fly in from all over the country, and they would come to Printed Threads, and they would learn how to screen print. Since then, I've taught thousands of people how to screen print t-shirts. Because of all my involvement in the industry, this media company and blog site that was helping with education asked me to be involved. It's called the Ink Kitchen. And so suddenly I'm a partner in a business called the Ink Kitchen, which is doing all kinds of education events and trade show events. Shortly after that, a friend of mine approached me and said, hey, you know, there's this cut and sew facility in Haiti. And they're taking these people that don't have jobs and giving them jobs, and they're paying them a living wage. I was like, what's a living wage? They're like, well, you know, they make $2 a day over there. I was like, that doesn't seem like very much money. And so we start this project, and then this project just starts exploding. And so, okay, we're going to pay them a living wage, which means they're going to get paid way more than $2 an hour, $2 a day, sorry. And then it also is connected to these orphanages in Haiti, where when these kids turn 16, they start being trained on skills, agriculture, textiles, diesel mechanics, because those are the main industries over there. And when they age out, when they turn 18, now they have a job, right? And the goal is to break the cycle of orphanage, because what happens is these kids, if they get kicked out on the streets, they don't have any skills, they resort to crime and all these other things, and just continue these broken lives. And so so they throw that, and then they're like, hey, let's also, like, while we're doing it, you know, since we're all screen printers that are involved in this project, let's make a shirt that our customers actually would like to wear. And so we made a fit that fit really well. We made it out of fabric that is organic cotton, recycled polyester, and modal. It's a very sustainable product, and you wouldn't believe it, but every shirt is extremely soft and has 6 water bottles inside of it that have been recycled. So pretty neat little project. And I'm you see this, I started teaching all these classes, and then a company asked me to be a partner in it, and then another company asked me to be a partner in it, and what did I say? Yes. Somewhere along this line, the general store is just becoming a headache for me. It's not really making money. It stopped being fun, and so I said, you know what, this is a dumpster fire that just needs to be put out, so let's make that go away. So this is my first failed business. And so that's humbling, right? And we had a good time while we did it, but everybody needs to have this experience, it's this little taste of failure, so you work harder at other things, right? At some point, SGIA, stands for Specialty Graphics Imaging Association, is the trade association for printing. It's actually changed names recently to Printing United Alliance, but they come to me and they say, hey, you're doing all this cool work in the industry. Would you want to be involved in our trade association? And I said, absolutely. Why would I say no to anything? And so suddenly I'm on all these committees, and then they put me on the board of directors. And so it's me and a bunch of old white men, really, on the board of directors. And that's like banging your head against a wall because they don't like young, new ideas. So through this trade association, I said, well, we got to do some more things for our industry. Let's do some different education events. So I started putting on conferences. In fact, this last weekend I was in Chicago putting on a conference called Print Hustlers, where it was sold out, 200 people. It was the first kind of event back in our industry. Really cool, life-giving experience. And Chicago's a fun place to go. But anyway, so I started putting on conferences. The first conference that I put together was one called ThreadX, and we started this whole series where we went to several different states and towns. I continue doing more and more education, being more involved, and not just doing classes, but I'm speaking at like every single trade show. I think one year I counted, I spoke at like over 20 trade shows. I literally got to a point where I was on an airplane every single week, which is exactly what I didn't want to do because that's what my dad did. And I've got 3 kids, and that's hard. And then this crazy, terrible thing happens called COVID. So before this, I'm running like 1,000 miles an hour. Literally running 1,000 miles an hour. I'm never home. I'm working like crazy. I'm staying up all night working on projects. If I'm not working on projects, I'm like probably doing something I shouldn't be doing, like going out and like calming my stress with alcohol or something. And COVID happened, and we had some really big decisions to make about our business. We went from, I think it was like, we're selling like, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff like a month, and to like $0. And it was like, well, I remember when they canceled basketball because we print a lot of stuff for the Dallas Mavericks, and I was like, well, that's it, And obviously things bounced back pretty fast, but right after COVID happened, we had another baby. So I think, the COVID shutdown was like in March. We had a baby in April. Scary time to have a baby. You don't know what's going on. It's very freaky. I went from, traveling and being crazy and all this stuff. At the beginning of COVID, I stopped drinking completely because that was not the thing that was going to be able to fix any of our problems. I was home. I was home every day. And that was different. I was with my kids and with my family, and I was like forming these different relationships with my children than I'd ever had, and just realizing, wow, they're fun and they're creative. Like, I want to hang out with them. I had Cove, 8 years ago. I was gone all the time. We didn't get to develop that relationship. Since August was born, April 25th of 2020, I've been away from him one day. In all of this stuff happening, the calm, I was able to kind of really think. Where we were in Keller, we were in a 15,000 square foot facility that was very difficult to find. And our landlord raised our rent at a really weird time. But it was what I needed. It was a kick in the pants that said, go look for another place. And so I drove by this building and called the realtor, came and looked inside of it. It was gross, dingy. And I was like, this will work, you know? Printed Threads colors are black. It was already painted black, you know? So I was like, yeah, this fits. And we came in, we spent a bunch of money remodeling it. And yeah, I think it was the best move we could have ever made for our business. We created this space, which can be an event space. We have a much cleaner looking facility that I'd love to show you guys after this talk. And I don't know, in a cool area. We can walk across the train tracks to Coco Shrimp and all those wonderful places to eat. It just kind of brought life back into the company in a big way. And we have a giant billboard on the side of I-35, if you guys haven't noticed, which could only help our business. Shortly after moving into this building, a good friend of mine that had done the branding for Printed Threads, his name's Paul Sermon, we had been having conversations. It was like, you know what, we do all these creative services at Printed Threads, but we don't have a great way to sell them to clients. And Paul was just kind of doing this one-man show thing. I was like, what if we kind of joined forces and created this branding agency? And so that's where the Creative Situation was born. The name The Creative Situation came from us not talking about, or not being able to come up with a name and just calling it The Creative Situation. So we went ahead and filed that. But since then, we've helped brand a bunch of companies and do all kinds of cool things for all these people. I can't wait for in a couple months when they unveil the new signage and everything for Rockwood go-karts on, you guys know where that is, on North Side. It's like a legendary go-kart place for Fort Worth. My mom went there when she was a kid. That was a long time ago. And shortly after that, one of my buddies from California had come down to Texas to work on a project. We do a lot of work within our industry, helping out some of the big brands. One of the biggest brands in our industry that makes apparel is named Bella Canvas. He works for Bella Canvas. He had flown down here. We were shooting a bunch of educational videos for Bella Canvas. And while we were doing it, it was like, you know what? It'd be really great to have this space where kind of like a lab environment where we can do all this R&D and testing and create videos and content and education and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And so I showed him this building next door that was totally decrepit and trash. And he said, this is a terrible idea. And I was like, no, I think it'll work. And so we spent a few $100,000 renovating the building next door and created an R&D facility that had its grand opening last month. And now MADE stands for Modern Apparel Development and Education. So as I've said, I've taught thousands of people how to screen print. I'm going to teach thousands more. And we've created a great space to be able to do that with amazing partners. We have a couple $1 million worth of equipment over there that was placed by sponsors that we didn't have to place because they believe in it that much. So that's a big talk about all of the things that I've done in the last decade. And if you look to the left side here, we've got 5 businesses that I'm a part of. They're all very demanding, and I sit on conference call after conference call. But what I've learned is balance. I think that while COVID was terrible, and I'm sure people lost people that they love and all of that, it brought something to me that I didn't really understand, which was like knowing your family and creating balance between everything that you do. And this was a couple months ago in Florida. When the pandemic ended, I had 1 million air miles. I had over 1 million air miles in my account. So you know what happened as soon as we got our shots? I bought us all first-class tickets to Hawaii, right? And that wasn't even a drop in the bucket for those air miles. I still had 800,000 left. So it's like you start to remember like, oh, we should go we should go take all of this stuff that's built up, all of these hotel points and these air miles and rental car points. Let's go do something. Let's give that back to the family. And so since then, we've traveled, we've gone to some cool places. This was Florida a couple months ago. We chose the perfect time to go to Florida, which is when a hurricane comes through. So normally that water's blue, and we weren't allowed to get in it. You tell your kids you're gonna have a beach vacation and then get there and say, you actually can't get in the water. That's not very fun for them, but we still had a really great time just enjoying each other. And so kind of what I want you guys to walk away with, maybe the key points, designing your week, designing your day, and designing your month are very important. And sitting down and being very intentional about how you design those things, when you do what, and how you do them. Obviously, life has gotten a lot easier because we've all learned how to have video conference calls, and it's become a lot more attainable. But being really intentional about when you do things is very important. I go home for lunch almost every single day. Before, I'd be at lunch meetings and doing all that stuff and doing stuff that really wasn't all that important. What I decided was really important to me was being able to see my kids multiple times a day. And so once a month, I'll take each one of the kids to lunch. And I do that cycle. So I'll go take Cove to lunch, and then the next week I'll go take Dash to lunch, and the next week I'll take Lyric to lunch. And then sometimes I'll take all 4 of them so that my wife doesn't go insane because she homeschools all these kids, She was able to leave her job as a nurse 8 years ago and stay at home and homeschool, and that was a dream for her, right? And so it's been a great realization in life and understanding, and the times that people say, hey, can you fly here to have this meeting? You can say, is that really necessary? Instead of saying yes. You can think about how to balance, okay, I can fly there, but can I fly in and out in the same day? Do we have to go do that dinner? Do we have to do this? And those are your choices. You don't have to let everybody else choose things for you. You can stand up and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Starting a business is very difficult. In 2016, I got sued for $1 million. There's been 2 times in the business where I thought we were certainly going to go under, and it can be very scary. And one thing that you don't realize is all these other people are on this ride with you, and so you keep everything internal, and you stress them out and don't give them back the joy that they should have, and that's being a loving father, being a loving family member, so that if everything does go away, if tomorrow, if all these businesses fail, I hope they don't, but if they do, I still have that. And having a beautiful family is way more important than having a big bank account, right? So anyways, that is my 2 cents on life, and that's who I am.